Hey everyone! So, at the very end of the holy month of Ramadan, there's this really special act of charity that millions of Muslims take part in. It's called Zakat al-Fitr, or a lot of people just call it Fitra. So, let's dive into what this beautiful practice is all about.
Now you might be thinking, okay, it's a donation. But is that all it is? Or is there something, well, something much more profound going on here? Something that connects our spiritual side with our social responsibility in a really powerful way. That's exactly what we're going to explore.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to break down what Zakat al-Fitr is, this idea of it being a purifying charity. We'll look at who has to give it, the nitty-gritty of how to calculate and pay it, who can receive it, and then we'll wrap up with its incredible spiritual and social impact.
All right, let's get right to the heart of it. What is Zakat al-Fitr really? What's its core purpose?
Well, you can think of it as a mandatory charity with this really cool dual purpose. On one hand, it's like a spiritual cleanse for the person who's been fasting, a way to make up for any small mistakes or shortcomings during the month. But on the other hand, it's this amazing social tool that makes sure everyone, and I mean everyone, especially the poorest folks in the community, can celebrate the festival of Eid with joy and dignity.
And this quote, wow, it just powerfully illustrates how essential this is. The tradition says that your whole month of fasting is basically left hanging, suspended between heaven and earth until you pay your Zakat al-Fitr. So it's not just a nice thing to do, it's literally the final step that completes the spiritual journey of Ramadan.
So if this is so important, then who exactly has to pay it? It's not a blanket rule for everybody. The obligation is actually based on a very specific set of conditions.
And the rules here are pretty precise. According to Shia jurisprudence, you have to be an adult, be of sound mind, and be financially capable. That means you have enough to take care of yourself and your family for the year. And here's the key part. All these conditions are checked at one very specific moment, sunset on the last day of Ramadan.
And get this, the responsibility doesn't just stop with you. If you're the head of the household, you're also obligated to pay it on behalf of every single person you're financially responsible for. We're talking your spouse, your kids, but it even extends to any other dependents and, this is pretty remarkable, even guests who happen to be staying over at your house on the night of Eid.
Okay, so we know what it is and who needs to give it. But what about the practical stuff? How do you calculate it, and when exactly does it need to be paid?
The traditional amount is set at 1 sa, which is an old unit of measurement. It works out to about 3 kilograms per person. And it's not 3 kilos of just anything. It's supposed to be a staple food from your region, so something like rice, wheat, barley, or dates.
Of course, in today's world, it's often way more practical to just give the cash equivalent of that food. This lets the family that receives it buy whatever they need the most for their Eid celebration. The amount changes depending on local food prices, but just for context, it might be something like 250 to 300 Indian rupees per person. Now, the timing here is absolutely critical. The duty to pay officially kicks in right after the sun sets on the last day of Ramadan. The absolute best time to pay it is on the morning of Eid before the big Eid prayer starts. If someone isn't going to the prayer, the final deadline is noon on Eid day. The whole point is to get the help to people in time for them to actually use it for their celebration.
All right, we've covered the giver's side of the equation. Now let's flip it around. Who are the designated people who can receive this special charity? Zakat al-Fitr is specifically for the most vulnerable people in the community. The main recipients are the fuqara, or the poor, who can't meet their own basic needs, and the miskin, who are the extremely poor, struggling even for their next meal. It can also be given to others in really tough spots, like people who are buried in debt, or travelers who've gotten stranded without any money.
Now, there's a very specific rule here within Shia Islamic law that has to do with lineage. A person who is not a Sayyid, which means a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, can't give their Zakat al-Fitr to a Sayyid, even if they're in need. But the rule doesn't work the other way. A Sayyid who is giving Fitra can give it to anyone who is eligible, whether they're a Sayyid or not.
This quote from Imam Ali just perfectly captures the spirit of this whole system. It frames this act of giving not as a suggestion, but as a divine responsibility on those who have more. It's a foundational piece of social justice, making sure that wealth keeps moving and creates a safety net for those who are struggling.
So when you put all these pieces together, the rules, the timing, the amounts, who gives, who receives, you start to see this really profound wisdom behind this one single act.
At the end of the day, Zakat al-Fitr is just this beautiful system that works on so many levels. Spiritually, it cleanses our month of fasting. Socially, it builds a safety net, fights poverty, and encourages compassion. And most importantly, it makes sure that Eid is a day of celebration for everyone, not just a privilege for those who can afford it.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This practice puts an act of collective care right at the very heart of a huge celebration. So just imagine, how might our own communities and our whole society change if every single festival, every holiday, every celebration we have started not with what we can get, but with making sure that everyone around us, with no exceptions, has a real reason to celebrate too?